absolute breaking point of the human mind. Two complete strangers, freezing temperatures, starvation, and intense psychological warfare. It's a wild ride, so let's get right into it. Okay, let's anchor this right away with the absolute crux of the challenge, $10,000. That is the amount of cold, hard cash dropped out of an airplane in a parachuted briefcase for every single day our participants survived out in the wild. Keep that number in your head. We're not talking about a flat prize for just finishing a task. We are talking about a compounding, daily accumulation of massive financial stakes. Every morning you wake up out there, boom, the math of your survival completely changes. Section 1. The ultimate survival bet. To truly wrap our heads around this, we have to look at how it all started. Two complete strangers, Haz and Grizz, are dropped in the middle of absolutely nowhere. They've literally never met before, but within seconds of shaking hands, they realize they have to become best friends if they want to survive. They get a basic set of supplies, a flare gun, and this wildly open-ended opportunity. The rules? Well, they're deceptively simple. Step 1, survive. Step 2, catch that daily airdrop of $10,000. And step 3, shoot the flare to quit. That's the whole shebang. The challenge ends for both of them the exact second that flare lights up the sky. Looking at those simple rules, Haz and Grizz set a crazy ambitious goal. They map it out right then and there and decide, you know what, let's stay for a full year. They wanted to split $3.6 million right down the middle. Which brings us to Section 2, battling the elements. Now, a one-year plan sounds great when you're hyped up on day one, right? But the visceral reality of base-level survival is a whole different beast. On day one, they had zero shelter. They were sleeping on raw pine needles and were literally one bad rainstorm away from freezing to death or taking a trip to the hospital. Just look at this timeline of misery. By day 9, they are near starvation. Day 10, they're forced to buy rations. And it isn't until day 27 that they actually catch their first piece of real food, which was an eel from a nearby creek. It's wild to think about. Contrast the massive wealth piling up every 24 hours with their absolute physical misery. They had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting there, yet they're forcing down boiled swamp water just to stay hydrated. And that brings us to what Grizz politely called the fast. It was his little euphemism on day 9 to describe the fact that they were in a state of severe starvation. They were surviving on a single tiny square of beef jerky in the morning. This calorie deficit became so dangerous that by day 10, they had to drop $50,000 of their hard-earned prize money. They traded it right back to the creator just to get 10 days worth of beans, some spices, tarps, and basic fishing gear. Moving on to Section 3, the economics of temptation. Because of course, the creator didn't just let them starve in peace. He actively messed with them. He tempted these freezing millionaires in training with hyper-inflated comforts. He basically set up a wilderness economy where relief is always right there, but at an excruciatingly high price. $50,000 for 2 Antarctica-grade sleeping bags while they're freezing at night? Rejected. $10,000 each for general store items like firewood or hammocks? Rejected. Even on day 50, they were offered a $40,000 boat, complete with a fresh Zaxby's meal. No way! Rejected. They literally chose to paddle out in a death trap boat made out of sticks and a tarp, rather than give back their prize money. The stubbornness here is just absolutely iron-willed. And here's the fascinating part. Rejecting all those massive temptations forged an unbreakable bond between them. Halls hit the nail on the head when he said, "I sleep closer to Grizz than I do my wife." By collectively saying no to comfort and yes to suffering, they turned that shared misery into a badge of honor. They became brothers out there in the freezing dirt. But things start to turn in Section 4, the psychological toll. As weeks dragged into months, the freezing winter finally gave way to a warmer spring. So the physical threat of freezing drops, but it's immediately replaced by entirely new mental threats. The warmer weather brought out snakes and these relentless rats that terrorize them all night long. Add severe cabin fever and sleep deprivation to the mix, and it takes a heavy toll. When you compare the costs of the relief they were offered, something super interesting stands out. You've got the expensive physical survival items, right? $50,000 for food, $40,000 for a boat, but then there's the relatively cheap $10,000 family visit on day 40. Financially, a total bargain. Emotionally, devastating. Seeing his wife and finding out his daughter wasn't sleeping well completely flipped a switch for Hesse. The expensive physical items kept them alive, but this one cheap emotional purchase planted the seed of their eventual downfall. That visit created a massive fracture. Suddenly, we're dealing with two very different internal monologues. Haas's motivation has shifted completely. He just wants to be a dad again. His wife's tears made him realize his family actually needs him home. But Grizz's motivation is still dead set on hitting that $1 million mark. He wants to push his limits and absolutely refuses to quit. This stark contrast perfectly sets the stage for an inevitable, explosive conflict. Which brings us to the emotional climax. Section 5, Friendship over Fortune. With priorities so drastically misaligned, the wilderness tension boils right over. The partnership that kept them alive for over 2 months starts rapidly deteriorating. It starts small, intense irritability over basic camp chores like fixing fishing lines. Then it escalates. Hayes actually runs away down the river, shuts off his camera, and sets up a solo camp just to get away from Grizz. And then it culminates in the unthinkable. Hayes sneaks into Grizz's bag and steals the flare gun. The money just stopped mattering to him, and he was desperate to end the challenge, even if it meant totally betraying their initial agreement. When Grizz discovers the flare is gone, they have this massive confrontation. Hans breaks down, admits the money doesn't matter anymore, says he feels manipulated into staying, and he's just completely spiraling. Now Grizz could have fought him for it. He could have argued for his $1 million dream. Instead, he looks at the guy he spent months suffering next to and says, "Brothers don't let each other down." This is the exact moment Grizz sacrifices his multi-million-dollar ambition just to support his friend's mental health. It's incredibly powerful. 74. That is the final count of days they survived side by side in that wilderness. 74 days of sleeping on raw pine needles, forcing down swamp eels, fighting off rats, and turning down luxury items. 74 days before Grizz finally handed over the flare, they shot it into the sky, and they went home. So what did all this suffering amount to? A final payout of $670,000. Sure, they had to deduct the 50 grand for the beans early on, but they still walked away with a massively life-changing sum of cash. Did they hit their $1 million goal? No. Did they make it a full year for the $3.6 million? Not even close. But they survived over 2 months in grueling conditions, and honestly, more importantly, they walked away with a profound, lifelong friendship that they both agreed was worth way more than the cash. Which leaves us with one big question to wrap up this explainer. How many days would you last before the money stopped mattering? If you were out there, freezing, starving, and totally isolated from the people who love you, at what point does $10,000 a day lose its shine? It's such a fascinating lens into our own human limits and the true value of human connection over sheer wealth. Thanks so much for diving in.